Again, my name is Lynn McEntee. I'm here for Youth for Change, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home, wherever we may be. Thank you for being here today. We're here for Youth for Change Canada, and that's the reason that we're here today, is to focus on things that are important to youth, and youth matters of the heart, being your authentic self, and all of the above. So be sure to follow us on social media, give us a like, put in a suggestion for an upcoming program, and get involved because we're here because of you. Today, we're talking about internet addiction, and we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Prachi Shah. I'll let her do a bit of an introduction for herself, but in the same sense, I wanted to just let you know that we're talking about internet addiction, and some of the questions that we had posed to Prachi today were, and if you could just give me a moment, I'll get that ready. So Prachi, we asked her, what is internet addiction? What is an addiction? And how do people become addicted to the internet, or any addiction for that matter? And some underlying core themes might be social media buzz, internet pros and cons, and defined perimeters of use. Again, my name is Lynn McEntee, and thank you to Youth for Change Canada for allowing us to be here. And I humbly introduce our next guest, who is Prachi Shah. Hello, Prachi.
Hi, Lynn. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. It's so wonderful to have you here, and I can't wait to continue the conversation for our viewers and listeners today. So, Prachi, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? We chose the topic of internet addiction, as you know, but maybe a little bit about your background and what brings you to the table of discussion today.
Absolutely. So it's been about a year that I'm here in Canada. Back in India, I've pursued my master's in clinical psychology, and here I'm specializing in addictions. I completed a program in addictions and mental health from Durham College. And if you ask me the reason why I chose psychology as the field, it's because I truly believe that any kind of recovery is relational, right? So every recovery can happen when you are in company of someone who is compassionate, who is supportive, and that makes all the more difference. And today, where everyone wants to make everyone else understand, it's good to be someone who takes interest in understanding people and making them understand things, right? So that is a little about me. That is the aim that I have for myself in my professional journey.
Prachi, did you always know that you wanted to get into this field? Was it something that you discovered in, junior high? Did you realize in high school, this is the direction I would like to go?
Yeah, I mean, I did not even know that there is a field specifically related to, and one can specialize in psychology. But it was only after I completed my 10th grade, I have visited almost every career counselor back in India where I reside and have attended so many education fairs and all of that. That is when I got to know that, wow, psychology is a field by itself. And I was getting a combination of psychology and philosophy. That is when I was like, I think this is something that really, really resonates with who I am as a person. So let's just see how that works for us. And yeah, so I joined my course, and then remaining in the field of psychology was definitely intentional because that also changed a lot for me in the ways that I think, the ways that I behave.
It's interesting you say grade 10 because we were talking with a person, another guest speaker on a previous session that we had on skill building and how important that is. And sometimes we don't really realize going into high school what we want to do. So it's interesting that some of those things are unraveled and unfold before our eyes, actually, as we're going through that process of, just kind of connecting the dots, I guess, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Prachi, I wanted to, I'm just going to just read out about our mission because it aligns with having you on as a guest today and our values, actually. So Youth for Change is about bridging professional role models such as yourself and professional community partners and helping youth to develop personal, team-oriented, community, and national heritage values in developing leadership and social skills to become outstanding professionals such as yourself and members of their communities and country. So thank you to Youth for Change for allowing us to dive deeper and dig a little deeper into the conversation today with Prachi. Prachi, would you mind if I just go for it and start out with the first question that we had posed to you? What is an addiction?
Sure, absolutely. Addiction as a term is very difficult to define as the research still continues. We learn in greater depth about what addiction really is. And because the term addiction is used so vaguely today, to just sharpen it a little, an organization has given the presence of four C's to define an addiction. And these four C's are one, craving. You have an intense urge to engage in a particular activity. Second, you feel a loss of control over the use or the frequency of use of that particular activity or substance. The third is that sorry, I'm blacking out a little.
Oh, it's all good. Thank you. And those C's are important as we take a moment to pause. So I would love it if you could kind of recap those, because I think they're very important for any of our listeners and viewers. So starting out with the C's again, one more time, please. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate
Of course,
that.
no.
Yeah.
So an organization has given the four C's for defining addiction. The first one being craving. There's an intense urge to engage in that particular behavior or activity. The second is loss of control over the use or the frequency of use of that particular substance or activity. Then there is a compulsion to use that particular substance or the service, and to use this despite negative consequences. These are the four C's. Now, the presence of either one or does not really tell you if you are addicted or no. So the addiction is not an either or entity. It is on a continuum, and it varies in the risk and harm that it possesses.
So that's key then. Continuum, you had said? Continuum. Okay. I see. Could we dissect a little more from that, do you think?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. And addictions are also broadly categorized into substance addictions and process or non-substance related addictions, right? All the substance addictions, as the name suggests, include or involve a particular psychoactive drug like cocaine or alcohol or nicotine or anything of that sort, any drug, so to say. And non-substance related addictions, also known as process addictions, are other behaviors like gaming, internet use, sex addiction, pornography, disordered eating as well.
Right?
Right?
Could you have multiple addictions then?
Sorry?
Could someone have multiple addictions at the same time?
And actually, research shows that if you are exposed or predisposed to one kind of addiction, there is likelihood that the other kind of addictions would follow.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. And may I ask, Prachi, and for anyone that's listening or tuning into our conversation, do you notice those tendencies at a specific time in your life? Could you notice those things at a very early age? Could it be something that's developed later on in life? Could you maybe walk us through that before we delve more into addictions, but also internet addiction thereafter?
Sure, that's a great question. Research again suggests that it is during the time that an individual is transitioning into their teenage and adulthood forward, that is the time when individuals are more likely to sort of get addicted to different substances or different behaviors. At the same time, now because socially and culturally things are changing so much, at least we have a point where we can reference that we did not have internet. We can reference those days when there was no internet, when there were no phones. But can you imagine, for the generations that are already here and for the ones that will follow, they would not have that point of reference, because when they are born, we are very, very digitally active, right?
Yeah.
So given that change, I'm assuming that the age of onset of several kinds of addictions would go even lower. And even today, we see that many children who are exposed to a lot of screen time, because that is screen time is actually a digital pacifier, isn't it? So
I
even
love that
that could,
description is
and
fantastic. Digital pacifier. That's a great description. Wow.
mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted there, but digital pacifier and
Yeah, so that would also impact the onset of all these addictions.
mhm. I'm hanging on that one because of the educational field, and you think of like preschoolers, for example, being handed an iPad or some kind of device that we're talking about, and the reason I ask about early onset of addiction is that very much the case for someone who's maybe 4 or 5 or 3 or even 2 for that matter. Could they
Mhm.
develop that addiction early?
Now, when we talk about addiction, it is important, and when we talk about addictions with regards to devices and technology,
Mhm.
especially internet, it is important to keep in mind that any behavior or anything by itself is not a problem. Is not good or bad. Internet is not good or bad. It
Mhm.
is a tool.
Yeah.
It is merely a tool. It is the kind of relationship that we share with this drug, behavior, substance, whatever you call it. It determines if it is if it can be categorized as addiction or no, because it is our relationship with these tools that determine if we are using it, misusing, abusing it, or anything of that sort.
So then I guess the underlying core would be, what is the purpose of um, your desire to use that device?
Absolutely. And again, it is also important to keep a check on those 4 C's.
Mhm.
If you are feeling that intense craving, if you're feeling that you don't want to use it, but you feel compelled to use the
Mhm.
particular substance or product or anything, and despite negative consequences.
Mhm. Could you speak to that despite negative consequences? Uh,
Mhm.
yes, please.
Sure. So, if, for example, so another marker of addiction is how salient that particular activity is for the person. If that activity dominates major part of that individual's life, it is bound to create some negative consequences in terms of loss of productivity, loss of sleep, negligence at school or work, conflicts with self or with others. These others could be significant partners, family members, children, anyone.
Mhm, mhm.
So these are some of the negative consequences socially. Again, there could be negative consequences, like I said, about the loss of sleep, loss of appetite, even anxiety. Um, all of these also could be categorized as negative consequences of using a certain activity or a substance.
Mhm. Would that speak to instant gratification then? Does that Is that kind of what we're referring to? Is that instant gratification, that feed of needing to have it at that moment?
Absolutely. And instant gratification is also another reason why we get addicted to something, because in the fast paced world today, we are very, very used to having everything at the click of a finger,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So that instant, and actually, this ties much to the reward system in our brain. We as humans or as animals are wired for seeking rewards,
Yeah.
right? And this is a very intelligent design, because that is how a survival is also based. If
Mhm.
we were to seek something which is not a reward, which gives us pain rather than pleasure, our survival would be at stake. But
Mhm.
because we are humans or animals that seek reward, it also helps us survive a lot,
That's very
right? But
interesting.
our brains were never designed for so much stimulation. This stimulation is a lot.
Yes.
That is the reason instant gratification also comes into play, where we cannot bear to
Mhm.
remain in the present moment. We cannot bear to remain with our pain. And we use a substance or an activity to cope. with that pain, to cope with that distress.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you think that that's on an international level then? It's not necessarily predominant in one area, but more than ever, it's sort of coast to coast and ocean to ocean. As
It's yeah, we cannot this is something which has no boundaries, so to say, right? It impacts all of us equally. Of course, back in time, we could have said that, this impacts more those areas and the people residing in those areas where internet is more accessible. But today, it's accessible almost everywhere.
Mhm, mhm,
So easy accessibility and unrestricted accessibility is also another reason.
mhm. Unrestricted, yes, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So no cap, no time limit,
Hmm.
no boundaries. Yeah. Interesting,
Hmm.
interesting. Pardon me if I'm asking again about the 4 Cs. For anyone that's just tuning into the programming now, we're talking about internet addictions in general, but Prachi Shah is our guest today. We're here for Youth for Change Canada on Spotlight on Youth Matters because you matter. And Prachi was talking to us about a variety of things so far, but the 4 Cs, pardon me for some people may be learning about that for the first time. So if you could recap that and repeat one more time.
Sure. So the 4 Cs are, which are the marker for addiction, is um, first craving using that particular substance or behavior. Second, it is a compulsion to use. Third is loss of control over the amount or frequency of use. And the fourth is using despite negative consequences.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So we're talking about addiction, yes, but we're talking about an internet addiction as well, technological addiction, if you will. I wondered if socioeconomically, we mentioned that internet is accessible in many parts of the world now, but do you think um, it's based on access to internet in this case?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, it is one of the reasons why any sort of a process addiction becomes an addiction is because there's unrestricted access to it, right? If someone has a smartphone, the person has access to internet.
Mhm.
They can use it for how much ever longer they want, and there is no physical boundary here, so to say. I would like to tie this to the substance addictions because there are several ways in which substance addictions and process addictions are similar, in that there are 4 Cs, right?
Mhm.
4 Cs are applicable to both of these, where someone can overdose on a particular psychoactive substance, right? It is fatal. There are clear signs, right?
Yes.
Whereas in case of using technology or using internet, there are no physical boundaries. There are no physical fatal signals that, oh, you're overdosing on internet. You cannot overdose in physical terms on internet, so to say.
Mm.
So even that,
Mm.
if that does not happen, if there are no apparent signs, we sort of tend to undermine the negative impact of our behavior.
Mhm. And do you mind if I speak with you about then if someone is working and they're in the field of using the internet on a regular basis, how do they self-check not only for themselves in a healthy way, but for the betterment of the profession that they're in?
That's a great question, because when you are working in the field that requires you to use a lot of technology and internet, it's difficult to keep a check on whether this is healthy or whether one needs to draw any boundaries. It is always important to tune in to your bodily sensations. Your body will give you certain cues. For example, are your eyes hurting? Are your hands tired of typing? Or are you getting a headache, or is your body extremely stimulated with all the information that is coming your way? It is always important to tune into your body, because your body always gives cues. If something is healthy, or if something is overwhelming. It could also help to schedule smaller, shorter breaks
Mm.
between their uh, meetings, or between their use, so they could tune back in the present moment than being constantly online.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And with many of us working remotely now
Mhm,
with hybrid opportunities, it's a win-win for business and families in many ways. But it's being
mhm.
mindful when taking that work home and working from home, and setting those perimeters and boundaries, so that it doesn't impede in your with your family time.
Absolutely. And to add to that, it would also be helpful to designate a set work area, right? So you don't carry your work in your bedroom. So,
Yes, yes. So yeah, set work area, which is not very common, and I hear from many that they're still working out their work areas
yeah.
post-COVID, since they've been working more from home, right? And it can be all kinds of different areas where we're all running businesses and such, right? But it, again, being mindful of the space and setting yourself up for success so that you can step away in a very healthy way, um, and sort of get back to yourself, feed yourself, feed your soul, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, interesting. Can you think of a situation? I know we're kind of moving around with different topics, but can you think of a situation where in your learning environment, working with others, where that has come up, where it's just been overload for someone, and maybe you can think of a case scenario that you may be able to share with us.
Mhm, absolutely. I would like to tweak your question just a little. Instead of overload, I would like to give a reference of why someone must be engaging in more social media use, so to say. Um, any form of addiction is to overcome some distress or some pain. So, Gabor Mate, he is a professional, and he said that whenever he has his first session with someone who is dealing with addictions, his first question is not that why the addiction, he asks why the pain. There's something that the person is learning to cope with, and that is why they are using more of a certain substance or a behavior. So there was a case where one of someone I know who noticed that she is engaging more in online gaming, because there's a lot that's going on in her professional front, in her personal front, and it's just a lot to take in. And the only way that she thought she could cope with was online gaming. And then she started with, say, 2 hours a day, and she ended up spending like 7 hours a day engaging in that activity. Here, the key is awareness. When you are aware, you're able to take that step towards challenging that behavior, reducing that behavior, so to say.
Mhm, mhm. So for anyone listening and tuning in, awareness is being mindful, being present,
Mhm,
of course, yeah, with yourself. Um, and in turn, you can find alternatives,
mhm,
to dealing with that. And I loved how your positive wording. I know prior to us, being a part of this session today, we talked about focusing on not shaming anyone for having an internet addiction in this case. So could you speak to that, Prachi, for anyone listening in just now? Yeah.
Sure. It is very important to understand that everyone is doing the best they can with whatever tools are available. No one here wants to sort of put themselves in a spot where they suffer.
Mm,
No one wants to do that, right? So it is very important to be compassionately curious when someone shares that they are struggling. Instead of just telling them that if this is what you're struggling with, stop doing it. If it was that easy, they would have done it. They did not need you to say that to them.
Mhm.
That is why it is very, very important to have that compassion and that curiosity when asking when someone shares with you that they are dealing with something which is very difficult for them. And it is, again, it's not bad or good. It's about how adaptive or maladaptive a certain thing is. For example, if you ask me, or if I tell you that, I'm feeling very lonely, and the only way that I can seek some connection, real or imagined, is by scrolling on my Instagram, seeing what people are up to.
Mhm.
It really helps me be connected with people. It's helpful. But if you ask me if it's adaptive, I would take a moment. I would pause, right? It's not
Mhm.
adaptive. It's not healthy. It's helping, but it's not healthy.
Mhm.
Similarly, any kind of drug, be it alcohol, cocaine, be it online mindlessly just scrolling or gaming or even pornography for that matter, everything serves a particular purpose in the person's life.
Mhm.
That is why they are indulging in that activity. They are using that as a coping mechanism. It's helping them, but it's not adaptive. So it is important to have this in mind that whatever they are engaging in is something they are doing to help themselves, which is not going the way that they expect.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's a shining light. It's a hopeful to approach it that way. Um, I'm wondering just about intergenerational addictions.
Mhm.
And in this case, because internet is fairly new, as we spoke of. So are you finding that intergenerational that people are having challenges coping? Yeah.
Very much so. Also, this reminds me of an important point that all addictions are behaviors, and behaviors are learned. There's
Mm,
a model. There's a model, or so, or there is a prior experience that so you used a substance, you experienced how that substance feels in your body. You liked it because it activated your reward system,
uh-huh.
and you sort of do it over and over again. That is one, by experience, or otherwise by if someone modeled that behavior for you. For example, if someone has a parent who struggles with alcohol addictions or who's living with alcohol addiction, that behavior is sort of modeled, and the child is likely, or actually, I'll reframe that: the child is at risk for developing that addiction too. It is one of the risk factors,
I see. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that
right?
makes sense. That seems clear for sure. For sure. They're predisposed in some
Mhm.
cases. Yeah. Yeah. Predisposed. Yeah. Interesting. Have you seen a group of family members that may be dealing with issues such as internet addiction collectively?
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, that any sort of an addiction already existing is sort of a gateway to other addictions too.
Mhm.
So it's not just that. I had a case where the father was using nicotine,
Mhm.
and the son, and of course, so okay, I'm going to go piece by piece because there are just so many factors that club in together to sort of show you the final picture, final current picture where the family stands, right? So
Yes.
the father had concerns with nicotine use, and nicotine as well as alcohol, and that created some conflicts between the partners, the husband and the wife, right? Those conflicts were witnessed by the two children.
Mhm.
And for the elder son, it was difficult to cope with the family situation at home. And he sought to cope with it again, to cope with the distress that he was feeling.
Oh, yeah.
He resorted to gaming
Mhm.
entire day.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's
So this is how it's sort of, this is just one scenario. There could be multiple, right? There are many factors that club together to sort of predispose someone to having an addictive behavior.
yeah. Thank you for addressing that, and also working in the education field as well. It's interesting just to see how that, and as you said, it's a bigger picture, right? There are many underlying factors because of that. So no, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So we're talking about internet addiction. We're here for Youth for Change Canada, Spotlight on Youth Matters. Speaking with Prachi Shah today, who's a guest expert in her field and is sharing her knowledge with us. And we are talking about how do people become addicted to the internet, or any addiction for that matter, right? Prachi, I wondered if we're just talking about social media buzz, maybe perhaps, and it's validating for many. Can there be a positive use for social media?
Absolutely. And again, there's nothing good or bad. It's how you use it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So there's a model, users and gratification theory, which is very much used when understanding social media and social media consumption. It says that individuals know why they are seeking social media. It could be for leisure, it could be for connection, it could be for information gathering, it could be for understanding their own selves better. So this sort of theory assumes that people, it's not that people are mindlessly scrolling through social media. They know exactly why they are using that medium, right? We are active choosers. So in that sense, it we get a lot of information from social media too. There are a lot of trends, healthy trends, which we get informed of because of social media.
Yes.
So there are, as you said, there are pros and cons, definitely, because it depends on the way we are using the particular medium.
Mhm.
Now, conformity bias is a big one, right? Seek, um, we sort of seek others' approval a lot. We want to belong. We want to adapt our behavior just so that we can belong and we can be relevant. It is a human need to do so. But ignoring your values, moving away from your value system to do that is sort of moving away from your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
you post,
yeah.
sorry.
No, please, no, you go ahead. Actually, I'd love for you to finish.
So you, thank you. So you post something on social media, even
Yeah.
if you don't feel like posting that because it does not match your mood at that time. You're feeling really sad, but to overcome that, you're posting something really happy to portray yourself as someone who you are not in that moment, maybe detrimental to one's psychological health. What you're doing in that case is, for example, seeking validation. And there's nothing wrong with seeking validation, I believe. As humans, we are wired for validation, and it's all right. How helpful is that validation for you, and how short or long lived that validation is going to be for you?
Mm-hmm. I love how you said that. How thoughtful is that validation? Because I think that is a muddied area. It can be muddied and cloudy for people.
Mhm.
Sometimes they think perhaps they may be doing some purposeful or mindful interaction there. But indeed, it may be, taking them into other areas of, you know, uh, lack of mindfulness, if you will. Yeah. And I think of inclusion and exclusion and how that can be very, very different. With internet use, internet addiction, is it inclusive or is it exclusive? Which one is that?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So even just gaming, for example, is that inclusive because the person's participating in the gaming process, or is it exclusive because the outside stimuli is being forgotten about?
I love that. I love that. That also reminds me that there's passive and active use, active
Okay.
participation, right?
Right.
You could be passively watching a movie, you could be passively listening to songs, or you could be actively singing, you could be actively playing the games. Again, that determines because um, you're feeling all of that in your body. It is a kind of it is an experience, right? So the more involved you, and of course, if you are dealing with some major trauma, if there is a lot going on around you, you would only want to be immersed fully bodily into an experience which gives you pleasure, which gives you that high or that buzz,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So it is also important to distinguish all of these factors when we are determining if someone is addicted or no, and if they are, why the pain,
mhm,
what is happening that they are not able to cope with, and they are resorting to something that gives them that inner buzz, the high.
That's good. And Prachi, you do a lot of work with youth. Yeah. You also do some programming for youth as well. I wondered if perhaps you may be able to speak to that, and as we can focus on youth because it's Youth for Change at the moment, and you also do another program that I can put in our chat as well for people to access. But I wondered just from the youth perspective, and as you are getting immersed in the programming for youth, um, what do you recommend for youth these days? There's just so much coming at them. Um, can you just talk to us a little bit about that and what your purpose is for the work that you do and who you would like to reach? Um,
Thank you so much for bringing this up. And yes, absolutely. I think youth, uh, there are so many programs that teach a lot of things to youth, but there are very few programs that want to really take an interest into what the youth is actually experiencing, what they have learned so far, what their experiences have been. This is the age where they are changing so dynamically. Their social structures change because they're usually in this transition of, moving out of their homes, away from parents, again changing schools, and so all of this also compounds to a lot of distress, right? So it is important to take into consideration all these changes that they go through. And when I speak with regards to social media per se, and its connection with youth, uh, my hope is that, so I'm just thinking of a better way to put this. Social media is a reward, for example, that youth is after.
could you
If
that keyword?
reward
Reward. Hmm,
is a reward, and it is a major reward, for example, how about we increase the number of rewards around them? So we have a broad range of rewards which are adaptive. For example, um, getting involved in an art club, getting involved in a game club, which is in person, right? Like maybe football or basketball or anything of that sort. Increasing the number of rewards around them so that they don't get addicted to just one particular thing,
yeah, I love
right?
that. I really, if you could expand upon that, that would be amazing. I love that reward system. Putting a system in place for yourself, for your family, whichever it is, but for the youth in particular, to have goalposts really is kind of what I think we're talking about here, right?
Mhm. Exactly. And that also serves as a ground where real connections can be formed, right? Where
Yeah.
they can share their struggles, where there's someone that they
Mm,
can open their hearts to, where someone is understanding, where someone is their peer who's
yeah.
going through particularly something similar. And they know that I'm not alone. We are all in the same boat.
Mhm, mhm.
Just that. thought can also be very reaffirming,
Affirming. Wow. That's interesting. So it seems to be the R words we're using.
Reward and reaffirming.
Yeah, that could be t-shirts right there. Or buttons. Right.
Absolutely.
And it's a release.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Reward, reaffirming, and release because of all of that, the
Mhm.
rewarding, reaffirming, right?
Mhm.
That's interesting. Yeah. If you were, if you were working and when you work with a group of youth, whether it be one-on-one or a small group capacity, let's just say it's a small group capacity. What's your mission then? What are you trying to achieve with youth who are feeling uneasy, needing those rewards, needing those goalposts in society, but just not quite sure how to get there or find them? How could you help them set up that framework? Empower them to set up that framework.
Wow, that's super powerful. When I work with youth, I am mindful, more so because I am acting not from a position of power that, you do this and your life is sorted. You do that and you'll be good.
Yeah.
As a youth, they get a lot of advices, a lot of suggestions regardless. And even that information is a lot. And that makes you feel like there's a lot of fear of missing out too. Or if I do that, I'm going to lose out on this. This is heavier. This is lighter. What should I hold on to? In my program, in my idea, the foundation that I would like to build in my work with youth is autonomy, a big one. You are capable of doing whatever you set your heart and mind to. And I'm here to support.
Just going to pause on that one for a sec. So you are capable. Beautiful, beautiful. And I think we all need that affirmation, but especially our youth today, because they really are the future, the movers and shakers of
Absolutely.
tomorrow. So you are capable, and you're giving that impression when you're in a safe space, and you're creating a safe space for people to let go, whether it be through laughter, opening up in conversation, talking about matters of the heart, and allowing them to be their authentic self by opening up, by doing all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's amazing. It really is, because it is, it's so important. We have so much coming at us these days, and our youth know that more than ever. And so acknowledging their skills is so key and so important, and what they bring to the table. Because they're often that can be overlooked sometimes because of age. And I think what we're all about as Youth for Change is shining light on our youth, and recognizing that they are capable, as you're talking about, and they are contributors of to society, right?
Absolutely. And at the same time, also giving them those community resources for support as well. Very important. Educating them on what are the supports that are available so that they can navigate through the system.
Could you speak to some supports just while we're continuing the conversation? It could be briefly or in depth as you prefer. Supports, for example.
So, I mean the supports in any and every way, be it how tangible they could be. For example, when I mentioned that youths also after a certain age sort of move out of their homes, assistance with finding homes, assistance with informing them of what their rights as tenants are, what their responsibilities are, assisting them with um, several career options, sort of listening to them and understanding what their skill sets are, as you mentioned, what they are interested in, what their aptitude is for, and giving them some options so they could sort of make an informed decision. It could be assistance with regards to navigating the healthcare system. Now their healthcare plan would also change because they are no more a minor,
Mhm.
right? So assisting them with that, all of these minor milestones help them to feel more in control of where they are going. So I
Mhm.
mean support with regards to so many factors that we can only sort of list at
Yeah.
this point in time. And then there are unique supports that individuals require in terms of accessibility, in terms of inclusivity, in terms of so many other things.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, that's it's just amazing. Thank you, Prachi, for covering that. And as far as in having the conversation about, we're talking about also mental health here. Yes, addiction, but it correlates with mental health as well. But then I guess I was wondering about cross-culturally. How do we keep the conversation going for, yes, internet addiction, but also mental health balance and resource accessibility? Do you find that challenging? Do you find literature and resources are becoming more accessible and easier to speak about? Could perhaps you speak to that a little bit about even just having literature in different languages, for example, right?
Wow, that's a good one. That's a great one. Having, yeah, because you want to deliver something to the person, it's best done in the language that they understand, that is their own. Wow, I love that. And I think there can be more uh, sort of resources available, many resources available in the language that is uh, understood by a number of people, more languages, basically. Yeah, that's a great one.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
It's so important. I think it's key, and that speaks to the, the commonality that we have as as humans, right? That
Absolutely.
everybody needs access to things. Um,
Absolutely. So it's great that there's just so much diversity. It would be better if we could cater to that diversity in their diverse ways.
yes, yeah. I find that very exciting, actually. When we can do that, I find that very empowering. It's inclusion, and that's at the core of everything that we do, right? And that's our drive when we get up every day, and to reach as many people as we can, right? That's the ideal if we can. So. I wondered, Percy, we got a little bit more time here, maybe about another 5 to 10 minute period, just for anybody that's listening or tuning in. Where would you like to go in this conversation? I'm going to let you take it as far as all of the above. We've talked about internet addiction, mental health balance, reminding to focus on the positive, not necessarily, having anyone feel shameful about, their challenges that they're having in life. Where would you like to go in this conversation? Define perimeters, perhaps?
Sorry?
Maybe define perimeters and how that can be empowering.
Sure, absolutely. And
Yeah.
before that, I would also like to highlight a little more on because we spoke a lot about what addiction is and why do people get addicted and of sorts.
Yeah.
What can they do to sort of manage their behaviors,
Amazing.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
So one of the things that I already mentioned, mentioned, and I would like to repeat is we want to get away from the reward myopia. Myopia is when we are hyper focused on one particular thing, and we that becomes um, very important in our lives, and we sort of go to the same center to get those rewards.
Mhm.
It is important to have a number of activities that really rejuvenate you, that you really enjoy engaging in. It could be hobbies, it could be anything that you are interested in. So it's important to have several activities that give you that sort of pleasure, that sort of reward, so you don't stick to just one, either drug or social media or internet.
So could we highlight a couple of those, just for example? Um,
For
maybe-
example, reading. Yeah, reading. For example, painting. For example, dance. For
nice.
example, taking up some other course which you're really interested in arts or culture or something like that.
And could giving service be part of that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Volunteering. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Musical theater.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, you can talk a little more about that later.
I think you're doing great. And so just being mindful of having those many things, many irons in the fire, I guess, so to speak, So maybe starting your day with a purpose, right? You've got, maybe you're doing yoga in the morning, but later on at night you want to do some musical theater, but when you come home you have to wind down a little bit. So find another way to do that. And not necessarily hop on the computer or your phone or whichever, but find other avenues. Even
Absolutely.
aromatherapy, for example, that's a whole different thing right there, right? You had said reading, reading to someone who can't read for themselves anymore. How empowering is that, and how uplifting,
Wow.
right? Yeah, yeah, all of the above, and
Very
it's
meaningful.
very meaningful. Yeah, yeah. Or working in a food kitchen, those kind of things, right? Yeah, yeah. Starting a club.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I was
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So all of those things, sort of what you're talking about. Wow.
Hmm. Along with that, also having some boundaries. These boundaries could be around the kind of content that you consume, the kind of also the amount of time that you allot to that particular activity. For example, as you said that as soon as you start your day, instead of directly scrolling through Instagram, seeing what everyone is up to, you could sort of take some time for yourself to set the intention for the day and
Yeah.
go from there on. So it is important to draw these boundaries around time, around content that you are consuming. And this is going to be challenging because you are telling yourself to not to engage in something that's pleasurable, not to engage in something that's rewarding. So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be worth too.
Mhm.
So being consistent in doing so also helps a lot.
Mhm. I
Even
love
if you don't feel like doing it,
yes.
do it for the sake of consistency.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you like that when you were younger, or did you realize that later on?
Oh, come on. Of course, later. I had my share of experiences too.
It's important for our listeners and viewers to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've learned through mistakes. I've learned through experiences. When I've hit the rock bottom is when I realized, oh wow, there needs to be some sort of an alternative for this. This needs to change.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's really key, because we're again, that we're human, we're experimenting, right? We get up every day and we're lucky to do so. And where do we want to take the day, kind of thing, right? Yeah. Um,
100%.
That's interesting. So Prachi, we have a few more minutes, and I wondered if we could focus on sort of a wrap up of the conversation of the work that you do, but also maybe some words of wisdom moving forward for our listeners and viewers.
Sure, I don't know about the words of wisdom, but definitely there is something that I would like to share towards the end, which I would. And when you ask about the kind of field that I am in, whatever we have spoken about today is all about behavior. Even the alternatives that I suggested are about modifying your behavior. But I would also like to take this moment to acknowledge that it's not just the behavior, but also our thoughts that sort of push us to take a certain to engage in a certain kind of behavior. For example, if I'm feeling really, really anxious, I'm feeling a lot of self doubt um, in my capacity, and to distract, I sort of engage in scrolling, which is a behavior. I can modify or change the behavior by engaging in something else, but it is also important to address those thoughts, the feeling of anxiety, the thought of self doubt, all the thoughts that you may be telling yourself. And it is absolutely okay to reach out to a mental health professional to sort of discuss these thoughts out. And there are evidence based strategies like cognitive behavior therapy. If any of our listeners are interested in knowing about more, they can always make use of internet, make it adaptive, and see what cognitive behavior therapy is about. So it sort of helps to reframe and modify your thoughts, which also affect the way you feel, which also affect the way you behave. So it is a cycle, right?
Mhm.
You can change your behavior just by engaging in a certain behavior, but you can also change your behavior by modifying those thoughts, which in the first place lead to those behaviors.
Mhm. Mhm. That's interesting. Prachi, if someone wanted to reach out to you, how could they get a hold of you?
You could share my email address. I'd be absolutely okay with that.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that is. Do you want me to tell my email address right
Sure,
now?
that would be great. Or if you want
Sure.
to, is it email address you said? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we can put that in our chat as well and sort of our viewing. But if you wanted to say it live for anybody who may not get a chance to tune in again, go for it.
Sure. Actually, I'm just gonna also type while I say. Oh,
Yes, for
actually, this is
sure.
gonna be a little difficult because I'm on phone.
We
it's
can.
it's my first name, Prachi, my last name Shah,
Mhm.
63 at gmail.com.
Okay. Okay,
It's
and
Prachi Shah 63 at gmail.com.
6-3. Okay.
63 at
Okay.
gmail.com.
And for anyone tuning in, they can see the spelling of your name.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. And we can also put it in our description as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Prachi, it's just been a real pleasure learning from you, spending time with you, growing with you in this conversation. And hopefully our listeners and viewers have been enlightened to be a part of the discussion on internet addiction, but also I think mental health balance and resources. Resources is what comes to mind, and empowerment. So I think that's probably the time that we have for today. And we've been so fortunate to have Prachi Shah. Thank you so much for being a part of this today, Prachi. I do look
Thank you very much, Lynn. It's been a pleasure to speak with you
you
and be
too.
here today.
Me too. I'm very grateful. And thank you to Youth for Change Canada for allowing us to be here. Please reach out to us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, tell your friends about us, and follow us for any future programming that we have, because we're all about you and we're all about Spotlight on Youth Matters. Thank you. My name is Lynn McEntee, being your humble host, and I've been here with Prachi Shah, who's been our guest expert today. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.